high performers invest in their rest and recovery. High performers are amazing separators. They know that their sport is what they do and not who they are. They understand the ebb and the flow of performance. They know when they need to push and they know when they need to pull back. Like, they are as disciplined with their work as they are with their recovery. And part of their work is their recovery. And so for me, like, I talk sleep all the time. I talk being a good separator all the time. I talk about leaving your life backpack at the gate of the stadium and picking up your baseball backpack when you're in there, and then leaving your baseball backpack at the stadium and picking up your life backpack.
Thank you for tuning in and thank you for listening. This is the Elev8 podcast. I am your host and coach, Tyler Johnson. Whether you've tuned in to elevate your mindset, your game, or just your day, you have come to the right place once again. My guest this episode is a former collegiate athlete himself and currently the mental performance coach for the Cleveland Indians. Welcome to the Elev8 podcast, Brian Miles. How are you doing today from spring training?
It's another beautiful day here in Goodyear, Arizona. My wife will hate me for saying this, but I know it's cold and snowy in Cleveland where she is. But I'm trying to soak in as much sun as I can while I can get it.
We just got off a couple of days of 0 degrees here and it's sunny, so we'll take some sunshine. Down at spring training, how did you get there? Mental performance coach, what led you into that field and into the role you have now with the Cleveland Indians?
I think probably like most mental performance coaches you talk to, we were the former athlete who maybe somehow got suckered into getting like our bachelor's degree in psychology and realized you could do nothing with a bachelor's degree in psychology. And so I think it's a little bit about, at least for me, there is an understanding of this competitiveness in sport. Played college soccer, was, always interested in sort of like that crossroad of where the mind meets the body and understanding about, the best ways to sort of get the most out of each individual. And so, I think like anybody, we're like, oh, if I had only known what I knew now back then, what could have actually happened? And I think that was a little bit of like the journey that I embarked on. Was always interested in coaching soccer and even learning about like, skill acquisition and how do you coach and how do you make it so that you have this knowledge up here, but it transfers to maybe it's an 8-year-old, maybe it's an 18-year-old, and leaning into a little bit of what that looks like. And so, the field of mental performance for me, I was always drawn to it, captivated by the mind. I think there's still this great mystery in what the human being is capable of. You see these incredible high performers and you see these feats and you start to just wonder what led them to get that ability. There's this unique space of mental performance for exploration of really what that area is and what that topic. And I think we're just scratching the surface of it. And I think it's been that curiosity that's drawn me to this and to explore it more. And so, I think that's a little bit of what's got me. I'd be remiss without saying, grad school, Springfield College, incredible program with counseling, sort of that counseling background and learning those soft skills. And then working for the military really taught me those hard skills, really taught me how to understand mental performance, how to transfer that language to soldiers and to high performers. And the Army really taught me about feedback too, like chinking away that armor of like, this is about me when it's really not about you. Really understanding that the ego and the defense mechanisms pop up pretty quickly when you get feedback. And that experience working for the Army really helped me lean into and yearn for feedback for the increase in performance and recognizing it's not about you.
Yeah. For the next question, you brought up a good point. Can you talk a little bit about that 8-year-old to 18-year-old difference and just, how I've seen kind of some people too, and probably been guilty of myself at times of bringing a tool or skill that isn't age ready yet, or something like that. Can you talk about kind of a little bit of that evolution?
I think that I just, I think sometimes we need to have that empathy and bring ourselves back into the sport when we were that young, and just what it's really about, and listen, I understand that, especially in America, and I mean, I watch a ton of European soccer, so I understand sort of like European academies in soccer.
Sure.
But don't get me wrong, they start young, and I think that's a very real thing. But like we need to meet athletes where they are. One of the best things I ever learned in our counseling program was that athletes will oftentimes take you where they need to go. Where an 8-year-old is going to take you versus where an 18-year-old is going to take you is vastly different. As a coach or as a mental performance coach, again, if we're letting the athlete take us where they need to go, then we'll be able to understand sort of that age component, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's probably the most important part, is meeting the athlete where they are and not trying to take them where you want them to go.
Yeah.
And that that takes self-discipline. That takes a lot less talking and a lot more listening. And that takes a lot of question asking too. And that's probably a huge area that the counseling skills really helped me, as we sort of look at what the work is in the
Right.
military and professional baseball too.
Very cool. So down there in Arizona for a while, as they gear up for another season, what is it like for you, and what are you doing to prime and get these guys ready? Classroom sessions, on the field, one-on-ones. What are the things that you're doing with them to get them mentally prepared this spring?
Well, it's a COVID year, so it's definitely different than normal.
Right.
I somehow have a locker in my office now, just because we're trying to space out our lockers. And so I'm happy to maybe talk a little bit. So in a non-COVID year, it's probably the few times where we can get those group sessions. It's just everyone's in one building for 55 straight days, no off days, just
Yeah.
grinding, kind of getting after it. And it's a preparation phase, right? It's a buildup, and I think players and staff are trying to build up sort of their mental repertoire as much as they are their physical and fundamental repertoires as well. And um, there's a lot of unknown and ambiguity. I think there's people that come in and they recognize that they're a veteran and they're going to start and they're going to do their thing, and they're in that preparation phase. We have young guys that come in who basically are told like, hey, we're just giving you an opportunity here to get your feet wet in Major League Spring Training, and like you're not going to make the team, but we want you to have that experience. And they're excited and they're loose and they're having fun and it's different. And then there's that group in the middle that are competing for jobs, and
Sure.
there's a lot of pressure on them, and that pressure is brought on by themselves and sort of how they're interpreting and understanding the situation. That tends to be a lot of the conversations that we have during spring training, right? Is like how much are you engaged in your process versus the results, and what does that process look like, and how are you able to sort of lean into that more versus living and dying by each swing or each pitch. And so that's fun. And my office at times can be a revolving door. I've got a lot of books in there that players want to come and read. I've got a big whiteboard. I've got some puzzles in there that players like to engage in and just mess around because I think they're looking for a little bit of a break or a reprieve. We spend a lot of time with coaches too, and coaches have to have tough conversations
Yeah.
during spring training. Coaches have to give feedback during spring training and sort of understanding how that process goes and what they're trying to engage with the player. There's just a lot of moving parts. It's a long day at spring training, and I think even for myself, having strong routines and habits, like it's the time where I'm like, okay, like I'm going to buckle down and get up and go to the gym. And like, I can do that. And I have that space, and I'm going to eat well because we have good food here and it's available and it's easy. And it's like making the right decision. So I think as much as we're helping performers, we're performers in ourselves and modeling that behavior. Again, I think learning is messy and ugly and scary at times. And the more as coaches, we can model that messy, ugly, scary behavior, the more apt the individuals that we're trying to help will lean into that sensation and that tension. And that's what I think we try to model during spring training and throughout the season.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because just a big believer in it when it comes to team leadership, just that coaches being able to demonstrate that messy vulnerability and that we're not perfect. We don't have it all figured out. Can you talk a little bit about the positives of what vulnerability can create within an individual and a team?
I have a sheet of paper in front of me, no joke, with notes on it. And in the bottom, like after all the questions you asked, I have in huge letters like humility, vulnerability, and acceptance. And so
Awesome.
I kind of dig that that's the route that you went a little bit. So um it's hard, right? It's professional sports, and like they're, don't get me wrong, they're like, results do matter. Like
Yeah.
this is these individuals jobs, and so if you don't perform well, there are times where yes, you can lose your job. That's a real thing. And I think, again, so I think as a mental performance coach, our ability to be vulnerable and to share and to self-disclose and to be humble with the way that we work through things, oftentimes, again, it creates the psychological safety that I think a lot of us are looking for
Sure.
with the folks that we work with. If a coach can do it, I think that it allows that player more comfortability to engage in making adjustments and changes, right? Because, I think a scary thing for coaches at times is like, this individual is part of the 1% in this sport, and they got here doing something that got them here. And maybe that thing is just slightly not working, and we have a chance to make them even just 1% better, which is going to be massive in the scale and scheme of things. And how do we take this 1% performer and engage in that conversation about making a change that that you and I just talked about is uncomfortable, messy, ugly, and that you're going to look ugly before you look awesome. And that's scary, right? Because you're on a stage where people see you do that every night. It's on TV, it's on Twitter. People make GIFs of it. Like, people can comment about it. And so, again, how do we separate that? And I think vulnerability and humility is a huge part of coaching. And the more you do that, the more players will trust you. And that's what we're looking for, because we want to trust our players and we want our players to trust you. And when you have that environment where you can be honest and you can lean into a guy and you can also wrap your arm around a guy, man, those are like the best places to go work. And those are the places where when you walk in the door, even after a long day, you're just like, I'm so pumped to be here. And that's what I think the environment that a lot of people are trying to create.
Love it. What is you have a favorite tool or skill right now that you like to teach? I know we talked about the listening, and I know sometimes performance coaches like to, there's a lot to tell and teach, right? But is there something right now, maybe it has something to do with kind of the unpredictableness of COVID? Is there a skill or tool that you find yourself teaching a lot right now that you enjoy?
I'll certainly lean into something probably over the past year. And it's funny because I've been having the conversation with players and staff, but also a ton with our front office and honestly, my friends and family. So I think it's transferable. I think it's relatable. But and I know you had recently Nicole Gabbana on here, who I went to school with, and it's just
Oh,
incredible. But like, it's gratitude and optimism. And I look at that as a tick of the hard skill of actually hunting the good stuff. And so for me, the skill is hunting the good, and you know being really deliberate about that verb. Like, hunt is a verb, and there is a reason that hunt is there, and it's because like we are inundated with the negative things. We have a negativity bias that obviously was so important in caveman and cavewomen times, right? Like when you were hunting and there was a
yep.
saber-tooth tiger there, and you had to remember that, like, oh, my brain is ready for survival, and so like I'm going to remember and weight the bad things because that's what keeps me alive. Well, we're 13,000 years past that now, and yet our brain still has that function and still has that survival technique. And so we are weighting the bad things more than the good. We are remembering the bad things more than the good. We are seeing the bad things more than the good. And so when I've been talking about optimism and gratitude, it's been about being incredibly proactive with the actions of gratitude and optimism. And so hunting the good stuff is about actually seeking it out and finding it and being deliberate with the practice of gratitude and optimism. And so, the conversations with folks have been, do you want to drastically change your life and those around you? Then it's just changing some of the questions that you ask people and the questions you ask yourself. So instead of asking your children when they got home from school, how was your day at school today? Asking them, tell me one good thing that happened at school today. Instead of asking your significant other when they get home from work, hey, how was your day at work? In which they're going to unload all the bad things that happened at work and the people that annoyed them. It's, hey, tell me one good thing that happened at work today. And instead of starting your meetings with, hey, does anyone have anything today? Start your meetings with, let me hear two people tell me two good things that happened to them today. You're increasing creativity, you're increasing optimism, gratitude. You're changing the psychological functioning of your brain, of your body, what it does to you. Optimism and gratitude are contagious. And so you're creating an environment in that room that just flows. And so, with everything we have going on in the world, it's been about hunting the good. Like for me, and especially at home, like I'm just like everybody else. It's hard. You have family, you have work, you have things that are happening, and you just really have to remember the good things. And sometimes it is hard, and sometimes it's something super small, just like I hit a lot of green lights on the way to work today. And that was good for me, and other times it's your kid gets into college, or other times it's just like that coffee tasted extra good today. And so I think there's a deliberateness to it that we've really been trying to work towards.
No doubt. I was recently listening to an interview, I think it was on Instagram Live with an NFL player. And one of the questions he got asked was, and this player had gone through some addiction and recovery and is back on the field. And they said, do you ever stop in the middle of the field and look around and just kind of soak it all in and be in awe? And it was so cool because he said, yeah, but I've also trained myself that I can do that anywhere I'm at throughout the day. And I think that was just, and I just thought that was so cool because it's easy to be in awe when you're in a stadium packed and they're cheering for you. But when you're outdoors and it smells funny and there's nothing, a brick wall to look at, what are you hunting for?
Yep.
And so I like that it was, you can't just also expect that perspective to pop on when you cross the lines too. So, how do you see goals? I feel like sometimes this is a debated topic now, and goals versus, I know I'm big into daily tracking, but I think there's a place for goals. How do you work through that? Because I think baseball players probably have some achievement goals, measurements. How do you see that working effectively to be a positive impact and not a stressful one?
I think you're probably right on the debate. I mean, listen, goal setting has its place. Smart goals, they have their place. I'm like, I get it. Roger that. I'm with you on it. I think they all have a place. I'd probably rather focus on a player's individual process versus the goals that they're trying to accomplish. So what's interesting is, like, especially in baseball, like if you ask a younger player, like, what are your goals this season? Like they'll pop out some results oriented things, right? I want to hit 300. I want to do this. I want to do that. And it's like, okay, we need to really kind of go back a little bit. We need to start to dig and uncover things. And, I had read this thing by Marcus Aubrey one time. He talks about a results versus process paradox. So he says, how do we collapse the paradox of wanting something that is outcome dependent, but recognizing that the journey towards that outcome is actually where you need to focus. And so that's how I look at our process. Like our daily process is the journey to the outcome that we eventually want. And so how deliberate are you being with your journey? And so when I break down even journey, it's, what are you doing every day? Like, how deliberate are you being with your daily habits every single day? So from what you're putting into your body, what you're eating, to what you're doing in the gym, to how much sleep you're getting. I mean, this is all stuff before you even get to the field.
Yeah.
To, how much intent do you have in your cage work and in your side pen or in your bullpen to, again, to okay, now you're back in the clubhouse and you're eating again. Like, what are you putting into your body? When you go out and you take BP, are you going through the motions, or are you being present with every single pitch? Like when you're out there shagging BP, are you just going through the motions again, just catching up with the boys? Or are you taking quality, balls off the bat to try to see and try to improve your reads and what you're trying to do? That stuff all leads up to when you play a game, right? So that's all day you're taking skill in, all day you're taking it in. and your 3 hours to play the game is your chance to let the skill out. Like that's the fun part. That's the easy. There shouldn't be any worries during that time, because if you've done everything that you need to do to be in the best position to be successful that night, like you can easily go to bed afterwards and be like, I did everything I had to do. So whether I was successful or not, I prepared and put myself in the best position to be successful. And so, again, I'd rather break down goals into just like your daily habits and what you're doing, and really identifying what that process is. Because if you're super deliberate about the process and the journey, chances are if you're putting your focus, intent, and effort onto those things, chances are you'll get the results you eventually want.
Yeah. Love it. Is there a lesson? I'll bring it up. So I don't know if you know, I'm sorry. I used to work for the White Sox in my early 20s. I don't know if you knew that, but that's a Jim Thome 500 home run club when I worked there. But observing him and having that opportunity in those years, one lesson I saw from him, he was one of the older guys. He was always first in the clubhouse, first to arrive, one of the greatest attitudes. And that was just from observing him. I was like, man, Hall of Famers show up first, All-Stars next, and then the rest. And that was kind of it, whether it was the Yankees, Indians, White, it didn't matter. It just kind of that you just saw the people arrive, kind of took note. But is there a lesson in your experience? Of course, no need to single out any player or anything, but something that you've observed either from another coach or player that, man, that's something I can use or self-reflect upon?
Man, I feel like every day when I'm talking to the coaches or talking to the players, I'm just like, man, I feel like you're doing more of my job than I'm doing of my job, but holy cow. And again, it's the wealth of experience. And I think, we're super lucky here because of our major league coaching staff is so experienced. And so, something really interesting that I actually heard the other day from one of our coaches was, so he talked about sort of like the big moment, right? Where it's just like, you can feel it in the stadium, right? You can feel the momentum's going to go one way or the other. And he talked about a player that was on a previous team with him, and how, he was like a third base coach, and he's sitting there and he's like, the moment's huge. And this player, he felt like, he's like, this guy's taking forever to get into the box. Like, what's he doing? He's like, I'm ready to go. Like I'm nervous for him and everything. And he was watching this player was just taking his time. And what he said to me was like, he gets into the box when he's ready to get into the box. And he said he doesn't let anyone else dictate it. And it really made me think about just the readiness of a player, whether it's a pitcher or a position player or a fielder. And the idea that, there's very little control in the game of baseball. Mm-hmm. And when you can grab control and truly engage when it's your time and when you're fully present, I feel like that gives you the best chance to be successful. And I think in a game that is very easy to be pulled out of the present, and like this is like the most common phrase I'm probably saying in work, like each day, is like you can't change the past and you can't predict the future, but you can influence the now, right? Like you can't change the past, you can't predict the future, but you can influence the now. It's like, this is the only time, this is the only place that you can do something. But like, because baseball is so slow and the game is so slow, it's like, man, if you're up there in the batter's box and you miss the pitch that you wanted to hit, it's like your mind just immediately goes back to like everything that happened in that past 30 seconds. And again, it's like, then 25 seconds goes by and it's like, all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I gotta get back in the box. And it's like, you're just not there. You're not prepared. You're not ready. And so I think being deliberate when you can about like it being on your time, I loved that concept. And I feel like it's so relevant to being present and to being in the moment. And don't get me wrong, like, there's not a lot of those opportunities, but the more aware and deliberate you can be, I think the better opportunity you have to be success. And that's grabbing some control in a game where there's just not very much of it.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time around the game of football, and I think quarterbacks would probably agree that when the play clock's not coming down on them hard, doing it on, when the play clock's not on your breathing down your neck, take that second, yeah. I think, right? And made me think about it. Ken Ravizza would, when you're in the box, be in the box, right? Box.
Yep.
And I just love how that even kind of takes it a little step further of, no, get in the box when you're ready and then be in the box.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like you has a little control before I go in. So, love that idea. Uh, is there a best time in the day, or typically you got in baseball, long baseball season, night game. You got a lot of time at the ballpark in the afternoon. Some late nights, travel. Some getaway day games, turnarounds. Is there a time that you find best to work on the middle game, whether throughout the day or in between series or as it comes?
I mean, I don't know if this is a cop out answer, but it's something I believe, but before, during, and after.
Yeah.
Like you should be working on the mental game before the game. You should be engaging in it during the game, and you should certainly work on it after. And again, to the extent and pull of what each of those is, that's up to the individual player and the comfort they have in it. But man, there's there's so much that goes into the game before you get there. There's so much that goes into the game when it's going on. And for a lot of guys, the game keeps going after the final pitch and after the final out. And being able to be really deliberate with that time and space afterwards, and to be able to let go and to be able to accept. I mean, yeah, that's a huge deal. And that's, I think a lot of times what we are talking about with after the game is like, how do you move on? How do you close the so-called book on that night's performance and be okay to go home to your family or to sleep, right? And to be able to kind of engage and then come back the next day ready to perform.
Is there a common phrase that you hear that makes you cringe, whether it be in regards to mental performance or baseball or something that when you hear a coach say, well intentioned, but could be better?
It's funny. You gave me this question and I had to really think about it, right? So I actually think Duncan Simpson posted something from IMG the other day about phrases that like rubbed people the wrong way. And I saw a bunch of them. I was like, oh crap, man, I think I say that a lot. I gotta probably tighten up my stuff here. But okay, so I would say, and maybe it's like an all-encompassing thing, but so when people talk about the grind, right? And they talk about the grind and they talk about like, up before the sun, home after it, you can sleep when you're dead, like fill in the blank, right?
Yeah,
One
yeah,
of
yeah.
those. Like high performers invest in their rest and recovery. High performers are amazing separators. They know that their sport is what they do and not who they are. They understand the ebb and the flow of performance. They know when they need to push and they know when they need to pull back. Like they are as disciplined with their work as they are with their recovery. And part of their work is their recovery. And
Yeah.
so for me, like I talk sleep all the time. I talk being a good separator all the time. I talk about leaving your life backpack at the gate of the stadium and picking up your baseball backpack when you're in there, and then leaving your baseball backpack at the stadium and picking up your life backpack. Like I am all about investing in rest and recovery. And the idea, and don't get me wrong, like you got to work. Like I'm not downplaying hard work, but be deliberate and disciplined with your hard work. And then you don't have to do it from sunrise to sunset. Like be intentional about it. Understand what time with your family actually does for you as a performer.
No doubt.
Because I can tell you one thing, what my time with my daughter and wife does for me is absolutely unbelievable for my ability to do my job. Like unbelievable. And I would never be where I am right now if it wasn't for my wife and the sacrifices that we've both made, but specifically her, for the like care that she gives to my daughter when I'm not there. And so I don't want people to like get it twisted, but yeah, like you need to invest in rest and recovery. You need to invest in like being a good separator.
Yeah. Feel like a bodybuilder mentality bleeds in just because you lift some weights, and more might be better, but I think quality, just like you
Mm-hmm.
said. And uh, do you find, at least from my experience, sometimes with top performers on teams or people that are willing to work hard, I think sometimes that's the thing they need to learn the most is that I know I don't have to tell you to work hard. I need you to rest and be ready. Do you find that, especially with young guys maybe trying to prove themselves, or something, that's sometimes the priority.
Yeah, and I think it comes back. I think it even comes back to just like their daily habits and routines, right? So it's like so if you are disciplined in the cage and you take X number of swings in the cage with like incredible intent and discipline and with a plan of what you want to accomplish, like you don't have to come back later that day and go swing in the cage for 100 more swings because you accomplished everything you needed to. And so again, I think it comes back to intentionality and discipline. Because, yeah, like you said, like more is not better. And I think like sports science and workload will start to show you that more is not better. Quality is better.
Yep. I started wearing one of those Whoop things just from coaching. It's like, I need to learn how to rest and recover better. And it's made a difference for sure. Just to be at my best. So last question, one we love to ask our guests here. How do you define success, Brian?
There's a lot of interest when I got this question from you. And I really did think about it. And I think the way that I would define success is I think success is giving. So I think success is giving back to the field of mental performance. I think success is giving to our coaches, giving to our players, giving to our families. I just think the ability to be a giver and to understand that it's not about you and it's about them. And I think that gives you like the best opportunity to be put into a position where you really can be successful. I had a quote the other day that Adam Grant said. I want to make sure I actually read it right. I wrote it down. But he says, being a giver is not good for the 100-yard dash, but it's valuable in a marathon. And so I've thought about, our life is a marathon, and it's the benefits that we will find in performance, in relationships, and well-being. Like that far outweighs the quick 100-yard dash of being a taker and letting our ego drive. And so, I look at success as giving back in whatever form that might be for you. But giving more than taking is a huge part, I think, of the way that I view mental performance and the world that we work in. And so, that's been really important to me.
Ryan, that was awesome, my man. Thank you so much for coming on and recording with me today.
I appreciate it. Again, I love the episodes, and I told you before we even jumped on, just like the succinctness of them, of getting that quick 30-minute hit of what our peers are doing and some of the work. It's been an absolute blast. So I obviously appreciate it so much for the opportunity to be on here.
Yeah, and last thing too, people that are listening, where can they find you on social media if they want to find more of what you got going on? Where can they find you?
So my Twitter handle is Brian C. Miles. That's probably the main place that I'm posting some stuff. And I obviously have LinkedIn and would be more than happy to engage and share. Again, talked about giving, and I think that's really important, especially in our field. So, if anyone's listening and ever wants to talk mental performance or anything else that we talked about on here, please don't hesitate to reach out.